All right, Friday 10 o'clock, it's time for Windows 365 use cases. So welcome to our little webinar on use cases. We thought we'll do something different this time than we've done before, and I think many others done as well. So let's see how this flies out today. My name is Jörgen Nilsson. I work at the secure client team at Onevinn. That picture is probably 10 years old or something, but let's not focus on that now. And with me, I have my dear friend Niklas.
Yeah, hello everyone. Niklas Solberg, same team as Jörgen, and yeah, thank you for being here.
So let's do this then. So we will talk some about short about news and introduction, because the real thing we want to talk and discuss is actually use cases. What's some of the use cases we actually see for Windows 365, and have a discussion around that, me and Niklas as well. And then we'll do a short summary in the end. So let's get this show on the road. So we start with a couple of marketing slides just to set, so everyone is on the same page, right? So Windows 365 is a cloud PC that's Microsoft operates access control, the actual VM and everything. That's also something that's important to take into account, because we buy a service. And this is also a big difference from where, if we compare, if you're using like Citrix, Omnissa, AVD today, that's normally handled by the server team or team for virtual desktops. But when we move to Windows 365, we move it into the Intune portal. So we have all the administration done in the actual Intune portal itself. So we'll actually be moving the workload from one team to another, which also can be a big political discussion internally, and so that's a big thing. But for me, this is back to what's our strategy going forward. Is it buying services, or is it buying technology and still build the technology ourselves? We will do some short comparison to AVD, for example, soon. We'll talk more about that. But basically, Windows 365 is, we have different SKUs with different memory, disk size, CPUs, whatever we need. And it's still only a service, so you don't do anything basically. So the management of this is really easy. We manage them exactly as we do with all the rest of our estate. And then if we run out, you will get an alert saying that you need to buy more. You get reports saying that probably Niklas got this big machine with 8 CPUs, but he's actually only using 4. So you can actually downsize this machine as well. So we'll get all that reports for us. So basically, what we're after is also minimizing administration, right? And we also got some new options as well, which is called Windows 365 Frontline, if anyone missed that. So Frontline can be in a dedicated mode, and that's why there are 3 guys or girls in this little picture, where we actually can, with one license, we can spin off 3 VMs that are always running, or virtual PCs that are always running for those 3 persons. It could be that they're working different shifts in globally, but it will also be can also be used in other use cases, as we can spin up 3 machines with only 1 license. So say that we have a specific use case, which we will talk about later. We actually see what it actually is up and running. So we can actually say that we have like 10 licenses. We can spin up 30 machines for those 3 licenses, as long as we only use 10 at the same time. So that's also a big use case, right? So shared mode, that's when we spin up a machine. This is more like a shared machine instead. That's also what the picture tries to show, right? So on every license we spin up as a shared, we can have 10 users in that group have access to 1 machine, but only 1 active session at the same time. This is also something we'll come back to when we talk about the different use cases later, as this is also important, right? Windows 365 Frontline is there's a price difference between enterprise and frontline, but we can also use it in a smart way. So that's why it's very useful. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. We should have an elephant instead, Niklas. So if we look at Azure Virtual Desktop, this is a much more flexible solution if we compare to Windows 365. We pay per use. It's extremely flexible. If we have a scenario where we need to do like a huge calculation 4 hours a month, we can spin up a big machine, do that calculation, and then shut it down again. And that will be really cost effective. But it still is complex. We talked about this with another customer, and they compared it themselves internally. Like, it's when you buy furniture. So if you buy a couch, if you use AVD, you will get it in pieces and you have to assemble it yourself. If you use Windows 365, they will carry the couch in your living room and take the old couch with you as well. So basically it's the service we pay for as well. If we talk about AVD, or actually if we talk about another virtualization platform as well, like Omnissa or Citrix, it's still, we need to maintain that knowledge. We need to maintain a minimal amount of people with skills, so we can actually support our internal users. So we need to take all these costs into account, but as AVD still have a huge place in a solution as well, as we have a much more flexible solution, right? When it comes to Windows 365, as we said before, simple management. You just basically assign a license, put that user in a group, and your machine is up and running an hour later. There's no involvement at all. We get a fixed cost every month. That depends on how your budget is aligned as well and what kind of cost you want. If you want it as a running cost or a fixed cost. It's defined solutions, so it's a different fixed sizes, or that we can buy, so we can't change it in the same way as we can with AVD. It's much simpler, and the knowledge is the knowledge you already have in your Intune and device management team. So basically there's no, well, we need some Azure networking skills as well, so that's maybe not really entirely true if we want to use an Azure network as well from our machines. But otherwise it's still less knowledge we need to keep alive because we have the knowledge in-house as well already. I actually got the great honor of playing with one of these a couple of weeks back, and still the Windows 365 Link. Probably not the best picture I've taken, but that's why I'm not working as a professional photographer as well. But basically the Windows 365 Link is extremely small, no fans, it's quiet, pre-installed with Windows CPC OS. So basically it's Windows 11 where a lot of features has been removed because we don't need them. We boot immediately to the Windows app and log on and get single sign-on to our Windows 365 machine. It's built-in patching, built-in feature updates. We can manage it, or actually we have to manage it with Intune. Otherwise it's really hard to do anything with it because it's, the only thing you can do is log on to Windows 365 and shut it down, of course. So that's the only thing. So it requires Enter ID, Intune, so we can actually manage the device. But it's an extremely nice form factor, long lifetime, low price. And for me, I could have one of these machines in the office and one at home, because it's so easy to connect to Windows 365 and it's seamless when I have. So it's a very good experience, and it integrates with my Defender EDR. There are some things you need to take into account there, that malware protection is not running because there's nothing to protect against, because you can't execute anything. So it's actually running scheduled scans as well to save processor speed and capacity and heat and power and everything. So there will be some things showing up in like Intune saying that real-time protection is not turned on, but that's by design, so that's fine. So in this case, we know that Microsoft said that Windows 11 is secure by default, but I actually added that here because this time it actually is secure by default because you can't execute anything on the device. So it actually is really locked down. So it's a good fit. It's for sale in Sweden since like 2 weeks back. So if you haven't checked it out, I would definitely buy one and play around with it. It's as I said to Microsoft when I was there yesterday or the day before, is the most exciting and least exciting thing at the same time, because it's a really cool form factor and it just works, and that's why it's exciting and not exciting, because there's nothing to do basically. So it's like, yeah, it's a really good experience.
But at least you get some really good pictures out of it, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. My daughter would. It would qualify as a daddy picture if you ask my daughter, because apparently daddies are the worst at taking pictures.
The problem I had is that I actually returned it, and I have a lot of other pictures of it, but they are all bad actually. So this one, the least poor of the ones I had. So. But Niklas, what are the use cases then? We said we'll cover 4 use cases.
Yeah. So one of them would be bring your own device for internal use. To me, let me just switch over here. When I hear the word bring your own device, this is usually what I see, what pops up in my mind. Be it the kids' gaming computer with all kinds of funny stuff happening, be it a personal iPad, iPhone, where you are playing, all your games, and yeah. So and one of the most common scenarios for bring your own device for internal use would be when you forget a device at home. Like, hey, I need a quick way to be able to work for the day. IT, how could you help me? I did bring my iPad, or I did bring something, or maybe you have something laying around on a shelf to allow the user to start working. And as Jörgen did state, getting up and running with Windows 365 is really quick. So you would have the user be up and running in no time with Windows 365. And for a compliant device, we usually want to make sure that when and before the user is allowed to reach our sensitive data or apps and systems, we want to make sure they are working from a compliant device. So Windows 365 will definitely fit into that scenario as well, because by using Intune and compliant and conditional access in conjunction, you'll find yourself in that scenario. But that also brings some challenges, because we don't know anything about the device, because the user is bringing it to work, right? So how do we secure the channel between the physical device, which could have bad code, and the cloud PC, as in Windows 365? And how do we make sure that the sensitive data doesn't all of a sudden reach our unmanaged device? So it's kind of in both ways, right? So and another thing we see a lot of questions about is access to local shares and applications. So how do I reach? Because from a user perspective, we really want to find ourselves in the same look and feel as with our default device, our physical PC, the one that we did forget at home or similar. So we want to make sure that we have network connections from our virtual network in Azure down to on-premise, maybe. Okay, sorry. So yeah, so now you should see the screen here. Good. And also copy paste and print screen and photo of sensitive data is something that we want to consider. So where are my common files and net folders? This is probably the first question our users will raise when or if they get their hands on a Windows 365, because you want to have the same look and feel as you do with our default device. And how do I work with local intranet and web applications? So if a really common scenario is that we want to do some work with SharePoint, and then we say, yeah, well, good, we are using SharePoint Online. Yeah, but for me, for today, I was supposed to work with SharePoint 2013, some old stuff, and maybe I'm transitioning over a document and similar to SharePoint. So we want to make sure that they are able to reach our on-premise stuff as well, or any kind of web application. And in order to do so, we can set up and configure a VPN, a site-to-site IPsec VPN, and it's going to work really great in my experience with Windows 365. And of course, this involves some security work, some design work. We want to make sure the full channel here is secured. It does require not only a Windows 365 device, but also like an Azure subscription and so on, because that's where we will put our customer managed network and to configure the VPN. And it's, as I said, it's really important to raise this, like what are the scenarios that we may find ourselves in, and we need to raise those questions in the early stages of the design meetings. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to change this later on. And for MAM, this works really well for any operating system other than Windows currently. So you can do an app protection policy for the Windows app, and the Windows app is the app we are using to connect to our Windows 365 device. So in this scenario, I do require a minimum operating system of 26.0, because you always want to require the latest, right? In this case, for demo purposes, I did want that. So the latest operating system for my iPad, in order to connect to my cloud PC, I would need to have 26.0 for my OS or higher. And as you can see here, I didn't update my personal iPad, the one I brought to work. So I am getting on the right side, I'm getting blocked when I try to connect. And I'm also getting word about, okay, how do I fix this? And this is where I think like MAM and app protection policy really shines, because not only am I getting blocked, I'm also getting knowledge about how to fix it. I have something to do in order to get this to work, and I could probably do this by myself and just update the OS for my iPad, and I would be allowed to sign in. And we can do this for a lot. We can require biometric signing. We can stop copy and paste between text and files down to the local device and so on. So this is just a quick example that I would like to highlight for the app protection policy. So for MAM and bring your own device, we definitely have different scenarios. And for Windows 365 Enterprise, which is the persistent, like the same look and feel, when I place a document or a shortcut on my desktop and I sign off, it's going to be at the same place when I sign in again. I feel like that's the most suitable solution for bring your own device scenarios. But in some cases, shared could make sense as well. We definitely want to do MAM and site-to-site VPN. Well, it just works basically. And for license, because in 9 times out of 10, the user will have all the licenses other than Windows 365 that they need to get going because they are an internal user. They have, Intune and Windows and all that good stuff. So we just want to assign the Windows 365 license, and they will be up and running as soon as we assign the license. In the background, what's going to happen is that our cloud PC will start provisioning, so that our cloud PC will be start to get ready for us as soon as the license is assigned. And of course, we want to consider more stuff from a security perspective. We want to consider most or maybe all of the security settings we are going to have a look at in our next use case, which would be the external consultant. And this is, in my opinion and in my experience, probably the most common one. So for external consultants, what we see a lot is that customers could ask consultants to, hey, could you please connect to our on-prem or our data, our systems, but with your work device. And this is a device which is managed by the external consultants company and not with our own management solution. So a VPN is sometimes configured, and all of a sudden we have connected an unmanaged device to our customer, and that means that stuff could happen, right? There could be malware on the external consultant's device, so it could infect the customer and vice versa, right? So VPN is usually a no-go. And for that, we see some SSL VPNs being used instead. So like, hey, you could just use this this web page and sign in, and from here you can click on the remote desktop app and you will be up and running. But those are also heavily exploited nowadays. We see a lot of exploits and a lot of proof of concepts circling around. So they are kind of on the radar for a lot of bad actors or threat actors nowadays. So that's not sufficient enough. And one more thing I want to highlight for the VPN part is that if we install like a VPN solution or a product, sometimes or nowadays it's becoming more and more common, that solution will also include local admin privileges, right? So if I were to install a VPN product on my device, my customer could automatically gain local admin privileges through that application or that VPN product, and they could do stuff to my device. So it's kind of a win-win scenario to not even consider a VPN for this. And of course, you want to make sure that sensitive data doesn't end up on the consultants or the external users' desktop or a device of any kind. And that basically means that from security, we really want to have a look at that. We want to put the design together and really make sure there are no loopholes from a security perspective, because we don't want any data leakage and so on in any direction. And from a license perspective, it could be a challenge, because now all of a sudden we have an external user who is supposed to start working with a managed device, as in Cloud PC. So what we need is a license for Windows, Windows 365, Intune, Office 365, Defender, Entra ID, and so on and so forth. So license it doesn't only require the Windows 365 license. We need to consider all of the other parts of the Microsoft 365 app, 365 stack as well. So for device redirection, so when our external user has connected, we have, as admins, we could actually secure that connection really well, I would say. We can make sure that we block a lot of stuff for device redirections, as you can see here. My favorite ones here is probably the clipboard and drive. So clipboard means copy and paste, right? If we block it and if we do not allow clipboard redirection, there is no way for our external user to copy and paste files or even text between the local desktop and the cloud PC. And for drives, do not allow drive redirection. That basically means that we're not allowed to kind of redirect our local C drive or D drive or anything else into the Windows 365 cloud PC, meaning that will also kind of mitigate how you would steal data from the cloud PC down to your local device. And another thing that I would like to highlight is from a data protection perspective. It's pretty cool to see how we are able to, by using the Windows app, we can actually block the API being used during screen capture of any sort. So on the left side here, you can see that I have my local device in the background, and in the big black box in the middle is from my Windows 365 desktop that I'm connected to. And when I try to do a print screen or screen capture, it would just, make a black screen or fade that screen to completely black, meaning that I'm not allowed or able to take a print screen of some sensitive data. Maybe it's an customer recipe or schematics or something that's not supposed to be leaked, and that's a pretty good way of denying the print screen. On the right side, we can also see that because we are on a pretty low level, blocking the API for screen capture, when or if our external user would try to share the Windows 365 app or desktop in Teams, it would fade to black as well. And this could be both good and bad, but it's really something that we need to be aware of when we lay the design and consider what data protection solution we wanna use. And because the print screen and screen capture, that's one thing, but what about if I would just put out my cell phone and would take a picture, like from a camera perspective, just bam, take a picture with my camera. What we could do is we could add a watermark that's traceable. So this QR code, if we find a leaked image, like, hey, this wasn't supposed to be leaked, we could actually add a watermark to kind of trace who did it. And in my opinion, this is more about, okay, making sure that the external user doesn't even consider doing it, because I'm sure you could remove these watermarks by using AI or Photoshop or something, or you could even just use Paint and make those QR code untraceable. But for me, watermarks is more about making sure they don't even take the photo in to begin with, and don't even consider it. And as you can see, when we do configure this, there is a default setting. And if you are using the default setting for the QR code embedment, it's not going to be traceable. So what we want to do is make sure that that specific setting is set to device ID for the cloud PC, and we will be in a good place in order to be able to trace it. Another thing on the topic when it comes to making sure that the external user doesn't even try to share or leak anything from the cloud PC is using conditional access with something that's called terms of use. We can use this for other things, not only Windows 365, but I like to do this when they try to sign in. During the first sign in to Teams or something, we could just make sure that they would need to agree to like a user terms of use, right? And on the right side here, we can see what that would look like from the external user perspective. And from I did record like a little demo of it. If I try to click accept directly, it will tell me, no, hey, you can't only just do that, you need to actually read them. Okay, so let's do that. And thank you, Copilot. Here is some AI terms of use. And as you can see here in red, don't copy, download, store, distribute sensitive data. Okay, let's agree to that. And now I am allowed to sign into Teams, and knowing that, hey, I did actually agree to this could actually stop the user from even trying to do something they are not supposed to do. And for the last one I would like to highlight is that external users really should use phishing resistant sign in, right? A phishing resistant MFA. So when or if they would get phished, because remember, we don't have any control of the actual physical device they're using. It's kind of a bring your own device scenario as well. So we want to do a phishing resistant MFA to make the sign in and token protection as protected as possible, right? So if we do this, we could use when we sign into Teams or when we sign into the Windows 365 device to begin with, we could require like, okay, hey, Niklas in this case, as you can see on the right side, welcome, but please step up your sign in and verify your identity with a phishing resistant method. My favorite method for phishing resistant would be a FIDO2 security key. And that's something I really believe we should consider as well. So this is kind of like a recap for your reference. And definitely one of the most things that are worth considering is how do we make sure no sensitive data is leaked down to the unmanaged device. Same thing for bring your own device as with external consultant. And how do we secure the identity and during the signing process. Okay, and with that, over to you, Jörgen.
Well, thank you. So you got all the fun scenarios, and I got all the all the rest. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. So let's talk about developers, right? This won't be that as much Windows 365 as I plan to start with, because this is a different challenges, right? What are the challenges with developers? Well, to start with, they always want to be local admin because they've always been, and they needed to be flexible and do whatever they want, right? The challenge today is, in the world we live in, both what you actually install, you actually need to have a lot of security awareness. I will get back to that. But some of them need to install applications. We can solve that with EPM, for example. We need to take security into account and compliance as well. Where is your information shared? Where is your information stored? Do we need network access? How do we access code repositories? So that's the challenges we need to solve, right? So what we could do is use a Windows 365 Enterprise. We could use EPM, Microsoft EPM, because that's supported on Windows 365. Will it solve all problems? No, probably not, as it uses a virtualized account. Developers, normally they don't want a separate account, but we want them to have a separate account, because the thing we're trying to protect us from is basically that you're browsing internet and click on a bad link, you read your emails and click on something bad, or you actually share code that you shouldn't share somewhere unintentionally as well, of course. So that's why we actually would like to have a separate account, but that's also a licensing and another discussion as well. So it's not that easy as we think, right? We also need to take into account what resources do developers need access to. What are they developing? Is it the full Visual Studio Enterprise? Are they using Visual Code? Are they using other tools? what do we want? What do we need, right? Windows 365 also supports nested virtualization, so you can install the Linux subsystem if you like, if that's what you needed. So it's a very good fit, and you can reach it from anywhere. And we didn't talk about, Niklas talked about the Windows app. The Windows app is actually a great experience. This is also a discussion we have now, is that when we look back, I worked with WinFrame 99, I think. No, probably before, 97 maybe, 98, 96. So that's a couple of years ago. So I mean that protocol has been along with us for a long time. But it was designed when we had really poor internet connections. And no internet at all, poor connections, period. But today we live in a world with better connectivity. If you use Windows 365, you host it in your closest Azure data center, and then it's fast access. And Microsoft is doing, which I would really love them to promote more. They're doing a lot of investment in the RDP protocol itself to make it faster, more secure, failover faster if something happens. So the whole protocol part is not that big deal anymore. That's not the discussions we have today. We have the security discussions, we have the cost discussions around Windows 365. And as Niklas said, we can both have a Microsoft managed network or a hosted Azure network, so we can actually access on-premise if we like. Or we use Zero Trust and use a different solution to access it. But Microsoft is also using, deploying, or have a service called Microsoft DevBox. Microsoft DevBox is actually going away and will move into Windows 365 in Intune instead. So it's actually, DevBox has always been built on Windows 365. So it's actually the same backend with only different front end. So the DevBox service will stop accepting new customers the 1st of November this year, and existing DevBox customers can continue to use it as they did before, deploy new machines and everything. But sooner or later, a migration path will be presented for them, so you can actually move to Windows 365 as well. So Windows 365 will take over that part as well. And that's of course driven by security as well. We want a more secure environment, and maybe DevBox is way too loose, I don't know. This is also a common discussion we get. This is not that much related to Windows 365, but we wanted to take the scenarios and talk about what you actually can do, not only from a Windows 365 perspective, right? So a couple of years back, we actually got a big ask. If you look at all the requests for Visual Studio, it actually gives us the possibility to update Visual Studio, install whatever you want in it, and so on and so on. So we can actually, we deploy Visual Studio using Intune, for example. We deploy a simple policy saying that, allow an standard user to execute the install operations. Then you can actually install whatever components you need. And we don't want to limit you to do anything else, right? But what will happen though is, depending on what you're developing, so if you're developing like traditional Windows services, you really want to test deploy them as well. But if you're developing more modern solution, you probably don't need local admin permissions anymore. Depends. So that's also a big thing that come. And when we do all of these changes, this is the happy developer we'll get afterwards. Happy and secure, right, Niklas?
Have you ever seen a developer
that was really far-fetched, I know. But he looks happy though.
Yeah, he is, yes.
But it is a big discussion, and we'll come back to that when we look at our privileged access workstation. Because the challenge we have today is that developers need to actually be very security aware as well. And I will come back to that when we come into the privileged access workstation scenario, because it's basically the same challenge, and I don't want to blow my thunder already now, right? So privileged access. This is also a normal use case we see, right? So if we want to use privileged access workstations in Windows 365 or AVD or however we want to do it, this is our tip. Before you do this, make sure that you actually lists all the risks. I mean, we want to have a privileged access workstation and control from where you manage your services, but why do we do it? And what are the risks, and which risks can we accept? I mean, if you have really, really strict compliance regulations and security demands, I mean, you need a physical machine you need to visit in the office. There's no other way to solve those. But if we can live with other risks, we could use AVD, Windows 365 or something like that instead of a physical machine. If we still go for a physical machine, we have set up before where we have a physical privileged access workstation, and then that is blank, and then we run a VM that is actually our production machine. But that's a horrible experience in Teams, for example, which ends up with our privileged admins are carrying around 2 laptops maybe. And we don't want that. So what we really want to do is, but again, Windows 365 could be the solution as well. So you have your physical privileged access workstation, and then you remote control the Windows 365 where you do all your productivity, you do whatever you need to do your daily work as well. So you only have to carry one device with you, right? But again, if we have really, the challenge we have is actually delegation. So it depends on which risks we are accepting, because we can't delegate and we can't protect everything as long as it's in the same tenant. So in some cases, we maybe should look at the management tenant, but that's why we need to do the whole risk acceptance discussion and which risks do we see and how can we mitigate them. So basically for me, designing a privileged access workstation solution is all about risks. Which risks can we accept? Which risks do we see and how can we mitigate them? And this is some of the questions we get. Can we manage? We like to call them privileged access workstations or vPAWs, virtual privileged access workstation using Intune and Defender. Well, of course we can. But it also means that all Intune admins that have access to default scope and the Intune admin role can deploy script software and take control of your privileged access workstation or whatever you like. Same goes for Defender admins. If you are a full security admin, you can actually run live response against your vPAW and PAW. Is that optimal? That depends on the risks we actually see with it in your organization. So this again, can we live with this risk? Is this a risk we can have? We definitely need the whole Defender EDR thing to protect our token on these devices. So again, if we don't trust and we can't live with the risks we see here, we need to have a management tenant that's separated totally where we actually can control this. And what are some of the limitations and why are we talking about this? This is basically what we talk about. It's limitations in delegation, both in Entra and Intune. I only wrote Intune in the heading. So basically what it's all about is that we need to scope everything in Intune. So I can't, when I log on as a second line, third line, normal admin, I don't see the privileged access workstations at all. And that's no problem. The problem is when we move to, for example, Entra, we move to device scope groups in Intune. So even if I put my group in a restricted admin unit in Entra, or I put my device there, anyone that have group admin permissions for a single group can add whatever they want in Entra to that group. So if we, for example, give the permission in Intune, so we scope away the objects, the actual privileged access workstations, but we still we create an application manager role and allow them to deploy applications. If we give them the scope, all devices, so even if they can't see the device in Intune, they can actually deploy software that still will hit that privileged access workstation or script or whatever. We can solve this with maybe with multi-admin approval. We need to do tiering in our Entra. We need to put up a good RBAC in Entra, Intune, even with Windows 365. Again, the Windows 365 admin will see the virtual machine and can basically delete all of them, for example. So there are still things we need to make sure that we do, right? Same thing for firewall rules. We don't want this machine to access everything. So maybe we should put this privileged access workstation on a Azure VNet and then deploy a firewall so we can actually control what you access from the machine. We need to harden it, of course. Application control for business is a perfect fit in this case, as it limits what you actually can execute. As Niklas said before, we require phishing resistant MFA, and we also need to manage all the apps. Because again, if we go back, let's see if I can, oh, wrong screen. If we go back here, so if we look at my paw, I think this works much better in English. That's why we're running the whole webinar in English. It's just for me to have my paw big picture background on my privileged access workstation. No, it's not. But what we need to take into account is actually Visual Studio Code, for example, as well. I mean, if we run a privileged access workstation, we need a good way of deploying, running Visual Studio Code, or actually running VB or running PowerShell scripts and creating them. But we also need to make sure that extensions, we talked about this before as well. We need and that's for the developers as well. We need to make sure that we actually limit all of these, right? Because if we actually look what they are doing, so if we look here, all my suggested ones are from Microsoft. The reason for that is that I block everything else. So what we want to do is actually restrict which extensions we actually can use on a privileged access workstation. And the reason for that is that if you actually look at many of the extensions in the store, there are so many of them that are approved by Microsoft because the code itself doesn't do anything wrong. But if you actually go to their web page, for example, it says, oh, we will by default upload all your code to our repo so we can improve our product. But you can opt out if you like. So again, we need to make sure that we only can run the things that are supposed to run. Same thing for our browser. Not only using firewall, but we can also use restrictions. So if I try to go to like maybe this page, for example, it should block me instead and say that I don't have the permissions because I'm not allowed to access that web page, right? So this is what it's all about, right? Securing this machine, because this is the key to the kingdom, right? We don't want anyone to ever have a chance of accessing this one. And that's why we also want it, of course, in EDR, so we can make sure that nothing happens to them. So that's what we really want to do in that case as well. So going back to our little slide and wrapping this up. Okay, that's interesting. So let's look at this. So wrapping this up, there's a lot of use cases for Windows 365. It's all about, for me, it's all about who is managing it, moving, saving time. When me and Niklas do presentations at events, I always ask the audience when we do like Intune troubleshooting or Windows 365 sessions. So how many in this room have too much time on their hands? And who has the time to even put in 3 or 4 hours a week in being proactive in security? And the answer is always there's always one person in the room, of course, but no one else have that time because tickets, projects, life actually access or takes up all our time, right? So this is what that's why I think this is a good way to go, to actually buy a service instead and use that time we free up from our IT admins to do other stuff. Because the bad guys don't sleep in the world we live in. So with that, we'll do some promotion as well. We would love to help you get started with enterprise with Windows 365 by doing a proof of concept. And what I actually is more passionate about is actually secure administration and all the things and quirks about it. Because as we said, there's a lot of Intune, Entra things, Defender that we need to take into account as well. So if you have any thoughts, anything, just reach out afterwards and we will happily have that discussion with you. And with that, we would like to thank you, both me and Niklas, for listening to us this Friday. Yeah, it's still morning, it's before lunch, so it's still morning. And you have our contact information if you have any questions afterwards. So thank you for listening to us for 50 minutes of your time.
Yeah.
And thank you, Niklas, for doing it with me.
Yeah,
it's
of
always
course.
fun
Pleasure.
to be too.
Yeah, pleasure. And happy Friday, everyone.
Thank you.